Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. My next interview is with Jonathan Nadeau. I think you're going to really enjoy Jonathan's approach pretty much to everything. He's a crowdfunding expert. He's a growth hacker. We're going to talk a little bit about that. An SEO specialist. If you're looking to raise funds through crowdfunding like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or GoFundMe, or one of the others out there, then Jonathan's the guy that you want to talk to. But we also talk about a great deal. We talk about a lot of other things. We talk about why he roots for the underdog and why accessible technology is so important to him. And we talk about virality, not virility, but virality, and how a crowdfunding campaign can go viral, and about what matters to Jonathan as well. And that's something he started a few years ago, the Accessible Computing Foundation. You're going to want to listen to find out why Jonathan is so passionate about accessible technology. Please stay tuned and check out this interview. Lots of insight here. And we also talk about why if Jonathan didn't have an accessible computer, he probably wouldn't be doing very much with his life. And I think that's a really profound insight. davidpecklive.com for more information about my own podcasting and my writing and my public speaking. Check us out there. But now please stay tuned for Jonathan Nadeau. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We are joined by another very special guest today. Jonathan Nadeau is here with us. He's a crowdfunding expert, a growth hacker, and I have no idea what either of those things are. So, Jonathan, thank you for joining us here today.
Hey, thanks, David. Thanks for having me on. It's my pleasure to be here.
So what, pray tell, is a crowdfunding expert and or a growth hacker?
Well, a crowdfunding expert would be, first of all, I put that label as just kind of like bait to, want to click on my profile, But a crowdfunding expert, I say, is well-versed in crowdfunding techniques and raising money through various crowdfunding platforms. And I guess that's where I fall with that. I've helped 150 campaigns raise money, some of them more successful than others. And I have a pretty decent understanding of the mechanisms behind crowdfunding and marketing crowdfunding campaigns.
So you actually host a podcast, several podcasts, I believe. You've hosted in the past, but you host a podcast currently about crowdfunding campaigns, correct?
Yes, that's right. It's called Crowdfunding Cast. It's found at crowdfundingcast.tk.
Crowdfunding Cast. So what are you learning? What are you learning about crowdfunding? What are you learning about the Ice Bucket Challenge and about how to raise your millions for your personalized projects?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Crowdfunding Cast, it was really, I first started doing, because I've been doing podcasts for like 8 years. I have a really heavy technology background. I have a degree in computer science. I have a degree in business administration. And so crowdfunding to me is awesome. I'm always rooting for kind of like the underdog. I'm one of those people, and I love that it just really levels the playing field. What really stands out for me is people that do independent films, or they're independent musicians. Where if you're an independent filmmaker, you have to go. 10 years ago, you have to go to this big budget production company and say, "Hey, here's my script. What do you think?" And they take a look at it and say, "It's a piece of garbage. We can't. We couldn't even make $1 million off this. Get out of here." Right. And just because you can't make $1 million or $10 million or $100 million off of a story doesn't mean it's not a good idea. And so crowdfunding levels that playing field where, if you can find the audience for your film, you can get it funded, good on you, and get it done.
So tell me about that. I mean, so you've got your crazy campaigns that go viral. Everybody wants to go viral. Everybody wants to make $1 million. I mean, it's, if you're doing anything that's a non-profit or charitable, any kind of campaign that's, has got some sort of, I don't know, what could I say, ethical foundation, let's say, or, is about the social good. I mean, obviously you're hoping you're going to go viral, but the reality is not very many do. what's your 2 cents there? I mean, do you need a crowd before you start to crowdfund? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, so before we get to that, so a lot of the clients that I work with, when I start talking to them, I say, crowdfunding is not what you expected, huh? Like, no, I had one idea going into it, and I pushed the go button, and everything blew up in my face. Like,
everything changed.
Yeah, it's not at all what I thought it would be. And not a lot of people, but quite a few people, they'll see these stories about Kickstarter. Oh, this company raised millions of dollars or tens of millions, or they'll see campaigns and Indiegogo raise millions or tens of millions, and people are like, I could do this. I'm just gonna create this little page here, hit go, and I'm going to watch the money come rolling in.
And watch it roll in, yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. Now, I'd have to say, I would say a majority of successful campaigns definitely do a lot of legwork that no one's aware of before they launch a campaign, whether it be 3 months, 6 months. I've even seen campaigns put a year's worth of work leading up to the campaign. So they literally build their crowd before they even launch the campaign.
Which is what a lot of people probably don't know
right.
about fundraising as a general rule. I mean, I think, I've certainly worked in the field, in the sector for years in the nonprofit sector, and often with, event management, for instance. People would bring in a celebrity and they'll bring a musician and a comedian in and do this wonderful event and charge $75 a ticket and then be surprised that they actually didn't raise any money.
Right.
And it's got a similar feel, except, just a different sort of mechanism.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I mean, a lot. Like I said, a lot of these campaigns that are really successful definitely put a lot of work into it ahead of time that no one realizes. They just come to the campaign and be like, "Man, it's only been live for an hour and they've already raised $75,000." And it's like, yeah, it's because they did 6 months worth of work. Like, it just didn't happen by magic.
So are you now a crowdfunding cynic, or would you say you still really do believe in the model?
Oh, no, I still believe in the model because I've worked with campaigns where, people would hire me after they hit go. And we still will raise, tens of thousands of dollars. I've worked with a campaign that, hired me after they hit go. They'd raised $5,000 on their own. And then before the campaign was over, we got them up to 90. So it was almost their goal. They wanted to reach 100,000. So, so it can be done even if you don't put all that work in ahead of time. It's not that it can't be done. I would say maybe it's a little bit harder, but it can be done still, no matter what. Like, I've seen so many things happen with campaigns I've worked with. I tell my clients anything is possible with crowdfunding, and it's not over until your counter is at zero.
Right. What makes somebody's campaign go viral?
Man, if I had that question, I'd be the silver bullet. That's the thing about virality. You just don't know where that lightning's going to strike. I tell my clients I bombard the internet with links back to a campaign because you just have no clue. I'll even drop links on like sites that make no sense because maybe it's a pottery site or like a florist site doesn't mean they're not going to like your music. Doesn't mean they might be interested in this gadget that has nothing to do with flowers. Like, you just never know where the lightning is going to strike. And so I always just plant links everywhere and anywhere that I'm able to because you just don't know. And every client is one link away from it going viral. Is one person pledging and retweeting it or sharing it on Facebook. They're just one share or retweet away.
Did you coin the word virality, by the way? That's hilarious. I've never heard that word used before.
Maybe, I don't know. I feel like I've heard that word before, but maybe not. I turned going viral into a verb, I guess.
Yeah, dangerously close to virility, as we both know. Yeah. So what's interesting to me about things that do go viral, so some guy's cat who's learned how to do card tricks or something goes viral, and it just what is it about it? I mean, obviously everybody's trying to figure out, marketers, advertisers, what is it about, is it the story? Is it something that appeals emotionally, well, because I'm sort of in the field in the sector as well, I'm kind of keen to find out myself.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think if you try to manufacture it, people can pick up on it, I think. I don't know. I honestly think true things that go viral literally weren't necessarily intended for that. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, kind of the Ice Bucket Challenge. That was just a brilliant thing. That was just kind of using guilt to to sort of spread it like, oh, I'm going to challenge you, and if you don't do it, then you gotta pledge whatever amount of money to the ALS,
Right.
So they kind of guilted people into it, but in a smart way where they utilized video, they utilized Facebook, like tag your friends that you want to have it done. So I mean, it was done in a smart way, and that obviously was manufactured, but it worked out really well. But an example is that latest video on Facebook, the lady with the Chewbacca mask.
Oh, haven't seen it, but I've heard about it.
I think that was a legitimate just video of her messing around, and it just blew up and got out of control, and she never in a million years would have thought it did what it did. Like, I thought she was just being funny to her friends, and she did, like, this quick Facebook Live thing, and she went into, I think it was a Kohl's, and bought this Chewbacca mask, and she brought it in her car, and she's like, you know what, this is for me, and I think it was her birthday or something. She's like, my kids are going to see this, and they're going to want it. I'm going to tell them, no, this is my Chewbacca mask. And, like, she was having a bad day or something, I think, that day. And so she puts the mask on in the car, and she just starts cracking up. Like, like her laugh was so contagious. Like, that's why, after watching the video, I was like, this is a real video. I don't think she was, at all manufacturing. Like, you could tell by her laugh. It just seems so real and so, contagious. Like I said, and so things like that, I don't think you can plan for. I think it just happens. It's the mood of the people on the internet that day, and just seeing the right video, I guess,
Which is precisely your point about planting seeds in certain spots on the net. That you don't necessarily see a connection, but somehow maybe there is one.
Exactly.
So does that lead? Is that a fair? Does that lead to another question that may or may not be fair? But are we just sort of scratching the surface with respect to crowdfunding, or do you think it's a bit of a phase or a fad?
I think we're scratching the surface. The people that are doing video games, though, I think maybe they're leaving a bit of a bad taste in the mouth of people pledging the video games. Unfortunately, there's been quite a few crowdfunding campaigns that have raised a considerable amount of money and have yet to release things, and they're 2 years behind schedule.
Okay. So I see what you're saying. So fancy new video game, you get to buy a piece of the game, perhaps, or something. And
well, I mean, they're like, hey, check out this really cool game. They'll have a cool screenshot, or maybe a minute or two of live action of the game. Programmed just enough to show you they have something working. And just pledge so we can finish it. We really want to finish this game. Look how awesome it is. And so you're not buying a piece of the game, but you're like, yes, I want this game. Here's my $30. I'm in a sense pre-ordering it. Here's my $30 or $50. And, we'll have it done in 6 months and we'll get it to you. And there's been plenty of games where a year later, nothing. 2 years later, nothing. There's one that pops up in mind. It's called Star Citizen. And they're actually paying Mark Hamill to do voiceovers, someone else to do voiceovers. And they've raised I think $130 million so far. And it's been 2 years, and there's still nothing to show for it.
Wow, that's incredible. So you're not suggesting that it's a scam necessarily? It's just...
I hope not.
Yeah, okay.
Because what in the world are you doing with $130 million and you have nothing to show for it? I mean,
yeah.
My goodness, So it is a lofty game that they want to do, but there's still nothing to be oh, hey, log in, and because it's this whole online universe kind of game thing they're doing. So they could at least have a login and be hey, check out, we have one level done, check it out.
Right.
There's nothing to show for it.
So you were fascinating. Your LinkedIn profile is really interesting. First of all, what the heck is SonarGNU /Linux? So we need to talk about that. But and I have an idea, I really do, but a little bit. But it sounds like some sort of NASA program. But you were president and executive director of the Accessible Computing Foundation. Really interesting. Tell me about accessible technology and how you landed there.
Well, I started the ACF. I gave that acronym. I might get back around to that. But the ACF was my idea because I myself am blind. I lost my sight in a car accident at the age of 14 in 1992. So I was right on the cusp. If you were or are going to be blind, it was kind of around that time where that would be the time to be blind, or even now. I mean, technology is amazing for any disability. But I lost my sight in 92, and I was heavily into computers up until then. I grew up with a Commodore 64 when I was in 4th grade. And,
Hold on. How old are you?
I'm 37.
You grew up with a Commodore 64.
Oh yeah.
That's
my uncle actually was a programmer for the nuclear submarines at the sub base in Connecticut.
Okay.
And he told my parents, I wanted a Nintendo when I was a kid. This is like 1984, so somewhere around there. And I wanted a Nintendo. It just came out, or it roughly just came out. And my uncle was like, no, don't get him that. That's garbage. He's like, you want to buy him this computer. And so my parents, it was for my birthday or for Christmas. I don't remember which one. And I wasn't a spoiled brat. When I look back at it, though, I was definitely spoiled, but I didn't feel like I was obligated to get these things. And, so they got me this computer, and I can honestly remember thinking, like, I didn't say it out loud because I probably would have crushed them, but I can remember thinking, like, I asked for a Nintendo and you get me this? Like, it'd be like asking your parents, hey, can you get me, like, a station wagon or something when I turn 16? I just want, it's some kind of car to drive. It'd be great. And your parents, they go out and buy, like, a Porsche, and you're like, I didn't ask for this,
Right. Totally turned it on its head without you even knowing it.
Yeah.
Still, it's pretty funny because you realize for the last 90 seconds, most of our listeners have been Googling Commodore 64.
Exactly.
You do know that,
They're like,
right?
What the heck is this?
What is that?
They're going to find the, I think they make, there's like those new emulators coming out now where like the Atari joysticks have like all these Atari games in them and stuff. I think they actually make some of those Commodore 64 emulators now, so that's what they're probably going to be finding.
My son has no interest in asteroids or Space Invaders.
Oh man, that's wrong.
It breaks my heart.
You have to lock him in his room and can't leave until you play this stuff.
Well, and you know what's so interesting about that? We're digressing here just a tad, but it's still pretty fun. Is that it's just a technology shift and how games are all about strategy today. It seems, whereas the games I grew up with were all about shooting things and blowing things up, and so now you really have to. You really got to go deep to get into a game, it seems to me.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting from a pedagogical perspective, and maybe from an addictive perspective too. I don't know, but anyway. So tell me more about how your I mean, it seems like an obvious link from your blindness to accessibility software. But tell me more about that. My father had Parkinson's disease. I'm working with a lot of landmine amputees in the work that I do in Southeast Asia right now, and I know that I don't know a lot about this, but I'm certainly familiar with it on a few levels. Yeah, so like I was saying, technology is great. The age that we live in, things are. They could be moving faster, but they're at least moving fast enough, and it's impressive what I can do as a blind person. I mean, I can pretty much do anything on a computer a sighted person can do, short of editing a video. Like, I can send emails, I can surf the web, I can create documents, I can look at Excel spreadsheets. I edit the audio on my podcast. I mean, so there's nothing I can't do. Is this Jonathan? Is this all voice activated? Yes, I have the technology I use, which every blind person uses, is a technology called a screen reader. And so there's various types of screen readers on all kinds of platforms. And so the screen reader essentially reads the screen to me. So anywhere you see, the text on, certain things, that my screen reader will read that. So if I'm trying to open up a program, say like Audacity, if I tab to it or arrow to it, once the screen reader lands on that, it'll say Audacity, and I know I'm on it. I hit enter, and then boom, it opens it up. Cool. And then I start using the program from there. And so basically, then that's why I'll open up Firefox. It'll bring me to the web, and then I can put in a URL, hit enter, and then it'll bring me to that website. Or I can go through my bookmarks on Firefox. I can look through my history, so I can access all that stuff just like a sighted person can too. I don't use the mouse at all. I use everything through keyboard commands. So was the idea behind the foundation to make the accessible technology even that much more accessible? Was that the idea? Yes, the focus was to bring accessibility into even more sections or sectors of life that it could be needed, that maybe isn't paid attention to or thought of. Because honestly, when I talk to a lot of developers or programmers or people in technology, I'll tell them, I might email people and say, hey, this is a great piece of software. I'm blind. I can't access this part of it or this part of it. My screen reader, can't read what you're doing here, so I can't use part of the program. And 99% of the time, people will reply back to me saying, I never considered a blind person using my software. I never thought it would be possible. So
a lot of the people will, fix issues or try to make things better if it's brought to their attention.
Right.
So, so a lot of these programmers or people developing websites never imagine, well, a blind person is not going to look at my website. What do I care, And and there are plenty of blind people out there. There's 360 million blind people in the world.
Wow.
So there's a lot of blind people out there, and that doesn't mean like totally blind like me, like I don't see light or anything. But 360 million blind people, meaning they have pretty severe eye issues or vision issues. Where they're not seeing 20/20, and even glasses won't help. So
right.
So that's where that number's at.
And those kinds of folks clearly are going to need assistive technology as well.
Exactly, and
in a lot of cases.
Yeah, in this day and age, if I didn't have my computer, I don't want to say I wouldn't be doing anything, but it would be much more harder. Like I wouldn't have graduated high school, I wouldn't have graduated college, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. Like without an accessible computer. So my part of the ACF was to make as many gadgets and technology around people as accessible as possible. And another reason behind it too is the assistive technology world. I'm throwing out a bunch of buzzwords here, but the assistive technology world is very, I'm going to go on a limb and say corrupt. And the way it's corrupt is there are companies that make this accessible software, and it's great, and it gives me access to a Windows computer and I can use it. And here's where they're corrupt. These companies will knowingly, or hoping they know, and they do a market research. 80% of blind people in the United States are unemployed. Now, and that's not because they're not smart, it's because no one wants to bother hiring them.
Right.
And so these companies will charge $1,500 for their screen reader software. And so they know that these 80% of blind people can't afford it. And what happens is there's a bunch of government entities in every state in the United States that basically foot the bill, and they pay the $1,500, and they essentially, quote unquote, give it to the blind individual. They call it like borrowing or whatever, but basically they're giving it to them. So this company is basically taking advantage of people and the situations they're in that didn't choose to be in the situation they're in, and they're being taken advantage of. And since the government or these entities pay the bill, there's no way for this company to fail. Like they'll always succeed. They're
Sure.
being fucked up. So the market can't judge what happens to this company because the market isn't even in control of what's going on.
Yeah, it sounds a little troubling on a few levels.
And the same thing is done with another example is I have a friend whose aunt is deaf, and this is maybe a year or two ago, and she had to buy this technology for her to use the phone where basically
Right.
whoever she was talking to on the other end would basically come out and text on her like device. I wouldn't call it a phone because it's kind of bigger than a phone, but the text would come out on the device, and then she would either like type back. I'm not sure exactly how she communicated, but this device was $5,000, and I said, "This is something a simple cell phone can do with like the right program. Like, so, there's no reason for this."
Yeah, no, that's insane. So I guess what you're saying is, and maybe what you were doing with the foundation was to sort of push back on some of that and say, hang on a second here, there's another way. There's a way that's way more affordable, that's a little more above ground, if you will.
Yeah, like, let's utilize the technology that's already around us. There's no need. 20 years ago, yeah, I guess that would be needed, But this day and age, we can just use off-the-shelf technology and make it do what we want it to do.
So did you provide software? And it looks like you've gone on to sort of stay very connected to this whole idea of assistive technology.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear more about that. Were you providing it? Were you creating it? Were you just sort of acting as a consultant to folks to say, hey, here's where your options are, here's how we can help?
Yeah, so basically I originally was intending for the ACF to be a nonprofit.
Okay.
I was unable to really get that to go through because we're focused on developing open source software. And unfortunately, here in the United States, there's been quite a bit of tax fraud around open source software nonprofit companies. So it is very, very extremely hard, basically impossible now, to get your 501c3. And so I've sort of given up on that, but I still have the foundation, but it's just not a nonprofit.
Right.
So the goal is to, if people want to, give donations or pledge to the foundation, we take that money and we pay developers to create accessible software on various platforms, to give access to people. Now, another one of my plans with the ACF was I've gotten in contact with some pretty high up people like at Google, HP, places like that, and I explained to them, it's in your interest to support this foundation, and here's why. And if you give us whatever, $100,000, $500,000, which honestly is a rounding error for them, we can afford to pay a couple developers, and if we make devices, laptops, more accessible, there's 1 billion people in the world with some type of disability, and there's close to that 1 billion people in the world aren't accessing the internet because they can't. So we would be bringing another 1 billion people to the internet. We would bring 1 billion people Google to see more of your ads. We would bring 1 billion more people to use your AdWords and to do Google searches. HP, we would bring 1 billion more people looking for laptops and desktops. And we kept talking back and forth. Push came to shove, and nothing ever happened. And what's sad is a lot of people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And it's just sad.
Is it because they don't see enough of an opportunity there? I mean, if somebody had stopped me in the street and said, "Hey, what do you think about this kind of technology? Do you think there are people out there researching it, developing it, etc.?" I would have said for sure, and I would have probably said Google and some of the bigger companies are absolutely on top of this. But
yeah.
By the sounds of it, not necessarily.
No, and I think they just, it's not enough of a monetary return, I guess. I figured if I threw out the billion, like, that would catch them, but, they weren't interested, and it's just sad. Like I said, a lot of people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. Like, I had a real bad issue a month ago with some Google properties, and on Facebook, I put, if you are a web developer or know someone that is one, look at what Google does and do the exact opposite. I said Google is the biggest offender of an inaccessible web. And a friend of mine tagged a pretty high up Google employee saying, "Hey, this is my friend Jonathan. He's a savvy computer user. He develops, an operating system and blah, blah, blah. This guy knows what he's talking about. You should consider what he's saying here." The guy never even replied back.
He didn't even reply, eh?
No.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, it sounds to me like you got a bit of a campaign on your hands there. Like, seriously, that's ridiculous. I mean, if you've logged hours and you've got some evidence, I mean, you certainly have a few blogs in the making. You get the right journalist on that, and all hell will break loose.
Yeah, and it's just things like that I've encountered throughout years, and it's just like I get frustrated and kind of stop for a little while, and then I kind of get back on it. It's just like I when I first started, I was like, well, clearly it's just education. That's the problem. People just need to be educated. But now we're past that. Now it's just flat out, we don't care. We can't be bothered. And it's frustrating.
You don't sound like a guy who gets discouraged too often. Do you consider? And I'm sure you do, though. I don't want to undervalue that. Do you consider yourself as somebody who has a disability? Does that make sense? That question.
Yeah, no, I don't. If people don't know me, they'd be like, "Oh, he's." I say I'm blind, but I never call myself disabled or whatever. I never think of it that way. And I have a whole theory behind that too. I wasn't born blind. I could see for 14 years. I talk and walk just like I can see. If I'm talking to you face to face, I'm looking right at you. Mm-hmm. Or if someone calls my name, I'm going to turn my head, even though I'm not going to see them. It's just force of habit. That's what sighted people do. And so I have the mannerisms of a sighted person, and I could see for 14 years. I know what things look like. I know what colors are. I know what cars look like. I know what trees look like, birds, animals. So I know what all these things look like. And from again, this is a very broad brush here, but here's my opinion from what I've seen. Kids that are born blind are sort of brought up in this system, so to speak, and I'm not putting any blame on the parents because they don't know. Oh my gosh, my kid was born blind, or my at the age of 6 months, my kid's going to lose his or her sight. What do I do? And so they look online. Oh, here's a blind agency. They must be able to help me out.
Right. And
so these blind agencies come in and put these kids in a box. When I was going to school and at college, I went back to school when I was 30 to get my degree. The person working with me at this agency who's supposedly supposed to help me was like, well, maybe you should just change your major if you're having a hard time doing this. I'm like, no, that's not the answer. Like, if you're having a hard time, you find a solution to the problem. Like,
right.
Her answer was, well, and she specifically also said, well, blind people usually don't do this. I'm like, I don't care what blind people do or usually don't do. Like, so what? Like, I can do whatever I put my mind to, and I'm not going to limit myself. And unfortunately, these kids growing up are told at ages 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, no, little Johnny, that's not what blind kids do. Don't do that.
Right.
And so when they grow up in this system, and they're too afraid to try things. And they're put in this box, and they're told blind people don't do this, but blind people do that. And then they just, unfortunately, they don't know how to fight the system. They think the system is there to help them, when they don't realize the system is actually keeping them back.
And is this something that you sound, holy cow, you sound like you got so much energy, and you got ideas, and you sounds like you should be speaking about these issues, or at least, and if not, writing about them, if nothing else. I mean, would you call yourself a bit of an advocate?
Like I said, I think in the beginning, I always sort of just root for the underdog, and
right.
I guess I am the underdog also. Like, it's frustrating.
Well, it's so weird, eh? Like, a billion people who have some sort of physiological disability, and that's a minority.
Yeah, I know.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah,
right.
Well, I think too. Again, and this is people all around the world. I can't speak for what it is like in France or Italy or the Eastern European countries. I don't know how they handle these situations with their people there, but. Just from seeing how blind kids are dealt with, being born blind and dealt with through the system, if you're born with a disability at a young age, you're just kind of, what's the word? I don't want to say conditioned because that seems wrong, but you're almost just kind of like, oh no, people with disabilities don't do that, or they don't do this, and then you're just happy to get what you get. When the crumbs fall off the table, you're just like, oh, thank you, like. Thank you for just really putting yourself out there and making this easier for me. When look, with the technology, if a handful of people got together, they could change a lot of people's lives if they just put a little bit of effort behind it. Instead, back to kind of the U.S., we have rules and laws and regulations of this has to be accessible. Here's the 80-page guideline of what accessibility is, and those companies will come right up to that edge and stand on that line, meeting the accessibility stuff, and walk away. Okay, we checked all the boxes. We're accessible.
Yeah, it's like we'll do as little as we can just to fall within the parameters of what's considered to be right,
exactly,
or socially acceptable.
Exactly. Yeah, because really, the company, you don't want to be that company. Like JetBlue. Actually, I can't believe they did this, but JetBlue was actually sued by a blind person because. I've never flown ever, but apparently their kiosk things were like these touch screens in order to like book your flights or check your flights and all that. Well, I mean, if you're blind and the thing isn't talking, how the heck are you supposed to know when your flight's coming? How are you supposed to book your flight? Well, apparently a blind person sued JetBlue over this, and JetBlue won the decision not to make their stuff accessible.
Wow, yeah.
And I was like, wow, you went above and beyond the Call of Duty to make sure you didn't have to make your stuff accessible, It's like, man.
Sounds to me like you should be an investigative journalist.
Yeah. Well, they'd see me coming a mile away.
The heck with crowdfunding, Jonathan.
But, and so that was, the thrust behind the ACF, though, is to just... I was like, it's got to be just no one's educated enough. And throughout my, like I said, I reach out to developers. They're just like, oh, I never considered it, and it was just out of ignorance. It wasn't out of, oh, I hate blind people. I'm not going to make it accessible, or, oh, too bad if you have low vision. That never crossed their mind. They just never considered it.
Is this about, we'll probably have to wrap it up here shortly in a few minutes, but tell me, is this really about education? Is it about educating folks who the JetBlues of the world, the Googles of the world, people who don't know, who, myself included, my dad was, by all accounts disabled in the last few years of his life. He had been diagnosed with Parkinson's for many, many years in the wheelchair. So I became aware of a world that I didn't really know existed. If you had asked me, stopped me in the street, of course I would have said, oh, well, this is what it is. But having lived it, and actually had to learn how to live with it, it changes things. So I wonder, for those kids that you say that are born blind, do they need to be educated differently? I mean, it sure sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, back to, there's sort of a two-sided answer to that. So the first answer is what I would have said it would come down to education. I would have said yes up until that last Facebook post when that right. specific Google developer was specifically tagged, brought to his attention who I was and my post, and did nothing. And granted, this is one person, but I think it's a very good tell of kind of the overall view where I was telling my wife, I was like, I'm seriously a second-class citizen. Like, I think I've been ignoring that's the truth and being like, no, it's education. People don't know. I need to bring their attention. But after that one little incident, and I mean, really kind of everything else building up over it, like, people will talk to you, and then it's just silence. Say, okay, right. we placated to him enough. Now let's just ignore him or whatever. And I was like, wow, I'm seriously a second-class citizen. Like, I was brushed off into the corner and just said, basically like, hey, whatever you got, whatever's accessible is accessible, and be happy.
So how do you stay hopeful, Jonathan? It sounds to me like you are. It's kind of like that question back to the whole crowdfunding thing. There is sort of I guess a watering down of what's going on in the crowdfunding world now. We've got the Indiegogo, Kickstarter, GoFundMe. I mean, the list is pretty big, and it seems to be growing. So you certainly sound hopeful there, and you're doing well with that, and offering a lot of value. What about this other stuff? What about this other part of your life that is your life? And geez, I'm not kidding about becoming an advocate, by the way. I mean, you know what? You already are an advocate, period.
Yeah.
The question is, what might be next? Sure. How do you get the flag and wave it from Mount Rushmore or wherever?
Yeah, no, I mean, so, technology is moving. I just feel like it can move, understanding technology, being a computer scientist, it can definitely move much faster at a much more rapid rate. And so one of the things that I'm doing to sort of tackle that is I developed my own Linux operating system, and it's called Sonar GNU Linux.
There we go.
Yeah, and so my own operating system, it's a totally 100% free operating system. Anyone can download it and install it on their computer, no charge at all. You can, download a copy of it and burn 300,000 CDs and hand them out. I don't care. It's totally free. So Sonar currently is being used in over 30 different countries. I don't know how many users there are. I just know how many countries it's been downloaded in. And so essentially what Sonar is you would download a DVD, and you can either burn it onto a DVD or put it on a USB drive, and you would install it onto your computer. Now what happens is a totally, completely blind person can install this with no sighted help at all. Wow. So when the operating system comes up, it boots into what Linux calls a live system, meaning the entire operating system is running live off of like the DVD or off the pen drive. So the minute it boots up, it's as if you're already in the operating system. So the screen reader that we talked about, the technology, it comes up talking right away. So a blind person, if they want to install Sonar, they click on the install button, and then it walks them through the installer. And then within 15 minutes, they reboot the computer, and bam, they're now running Sonar on their computer. And now with Sonar, I try to meet the needs of every possible disability that I can, because I understand, like, again, there's 1 billion people in the world with some type of disability, and so I want to meet their needs. No one else is going out of the way to do it, so I figured I might as well try to do what I can do. So on Sonar, it has the screen reading technology for blind people. It has screen magnification for low vision users that can magnify the screen up to an insane amount. I don't remember the exact number. There's also a font included for people with dyslexia. So if you have dyslexia, you can switch the font over system-wide through the whole computer, and it helps you better at reading the screen.
It sounds amazing. I guess my first question is, do you plan on dying broke? Why weren't you charging something for this software? It's amazing.
I mean, with open source, there's a whole philosophy behind that, sure. And I actually used to be, you use the word advocate. I used to be a strong advocate with like open source software, and it's not that you can't charge. You can, I could charge $10 a download, but I don't want to say it's frowned upon with like the open source way. But there's other ways to go about earning, money. So one model is providing tech support. Like, sure. I could, here's my Skype or email. I'll charge you $50 a month to give you tech support or whatever. Like, so that's one way of earning money. Or really kind of the ACF was going to be sort of funding the development of this, even though that's not really happening yet. But, someone could say, hey, I want this functionality. Can you do it? And I'd say, well, to get that functionality in Sonar, it would cost $1,000. And so there's ways of doing that where open source is extremely flexible and powerful. And so that gives me the opportunity to do things like that.
So you have about 19 different websites, I think, from what I understand. Yeah. So let's start with let's let everybody know about Sonar GNU. So it's SONARGNU, yep. Linux Linux.com.
Correct.
They can find out more about you there, and that's a Twitter handle @the Sonar Project. How Correct. Can they find out about you as the crowdfunding expert and guru?
That would be crowdfunding. I always come up with URLs that are a mouthful, and my wife always makes fun of me. But it's crowdfundingcampaignpr.com.
Crowdfundingcampaignpr.com. Jonathan, it's been an absolute delight chatting with you today. Honestly, you're doing great work. You really are. It's remarkable what you're accomplishing, and I love your passion. I love your commitment, and I can hear the. I can hear your focus and your sense of a better world in your tone of voice. I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan Nadeau, he's here with us today. Check him out on one of his 19 websites. He's not that hard to find. His last name is pronounced Nadeau for us Canadian listeners, and spelled Nadeau. He is a crowdfunding campaign and PR specialist. Check him out online. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, David.